Great. Now we are back with the great Randy Weston for our second half of Harlem Speaks. Before we open it up to you guys to ask questions, I want to ask, do you find that a lot of the musicians that you like to call on, do you find they have a natural feel with the African rhythm, or do you actually seek out guys who kind of have that inner feel?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Because for us, this music is family.
Yeah.
It's family. And wherever we go, Benny Powell, T.K. Blue, Alex Neil Clark,
Alex, of course, yeah.
we always go to libraries. We change books on African civilization,
Yeah.
you know, and articles, because we're still learning.
Yeah.
You know, I will never, ever know Africa. You can't know Africa because Africa is too diverse, it's
Right.
too rich.
Right.
But at least when you get the foundation of its spirituality, you know, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Myself and James Lewis, the bass player,
Bases, yeah, sure.
we helped to open up the library at Alexandria in Egypt.
Mm.
And it was quite a spiritual experience, you see, because I've played 18 countries in Africa. And wherever I go, I always try to find the oldest musicians. For example, when I first met the Ganawa, I met Abdullah El Gourd in Tangier.
Yeah.
And how that happened, because when I was in Morocco, people knew I was interested in traditional music. I don't want to hear nothing new. I want to hear the oldest music I can find, because I know that's the secret there.
Yeah.
Because this music is close to the universe.
Yeah.
This music is close.
Absolutely.
This music. You can't make traditional music better.
Yeah.
You can only learn from traditional music,
Yeah.
you know. So I was in Tangier one day, and the guy said to me, "You ever hear the Ganawa?" "Hey, who Ganawa?" He said, "You have to hear these people." So he brought Abdullah El Gourd in Tangier to my little apartment,
Yeah.
and he started to play the Hajouj. I heard Jimmy Blanton.
Hey, hello. That's right.
I heard Jimmy Blanton. I said, wait a minute, you know? And I fell in love with the Ganawa people.
Right.
And we'd live together.
Wow.
We didn't just go to Africa and just tape or record and leave. We had food together, we ate together, we drank tea together, we traveled together. And I tried to absorb these people,
Yeah.
but they are so spiritual,
Yeah.
you know. And it's us,
Yeah.
for us in our true form.
Yeah.
Because African people, for me, we're very spiritual people. Because if you stop and think about how much we have given to planet Earth,
Yeah.
and you just deal with the music, even though we were taken away, which was God's will, I believe that because despite of slavery, we created beauty,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Right.
So if you go to Brazil, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, wherever, Guadeloupe,
Exactly.
Martinique, you go
Yeah.
and you see African people, they are going to have a very powerful spiritual music.
Right. Right.
Am I right?
Absolutely.
That's our foundation,
Yes.
you see, because we believe in the Creator. And from this comes all this creativity. It's a miracle. So when I heard Ganawa, that was it, because when I heard Jimmy Blanton
Right.
play with that Ellington Orchestra,
Right.
I said, wow, man, it was something else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. One of my fondest memories of us together is back in 2002 at the Bern Jazz Festival. Remember, you, myself, and your lovely wife, we were sitting there listening to Ray Brown.
Ooh.
And this was about a month or two before Ray Brown passed on.
Yes.
And I remember we were sitting there watching Ray Brown, and we were both laughing with excitement, because I remember you were talking about Jimmy Blanton while watching Ray Brown.
Right.
And once again, we talk about that lineage, you know,
Yes.
being in tune with the ancestors,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and hearing that Hajouj for the first time and hearing that sound coming out of that little instrument,
Wow.
to shake the walls down.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
I want to open up the floor for you guys now to ask some questions to the great Randy Weston. Tatum?
Wow. Okay, I'd like to mention, we talked about Ellington and Monk.
Yeah.
Well, my first influence was Count Basie.
Yeah.
Because Count, he had not only had that incredible sound on the piano, but he knew how to use space.
Yeah.
And he was a master of the blues.
Yeah.
And for me, the blues is the essence of our music.
Yeah.
I don't care where you want to go. You go to space wherever you want to go. But the blues, that's us, you know.
Yeah.
The second was Nat King Cole.
Yeah.
Because Nat's piano was just beauty.
That's right.
Every note was just like a jewel, you know.
Yeah.
The third was Art Tatum.
Yeah.
Now, I went to hear Art Tatum on 52nd Street, and I sat close to him, and his hands were this far off the piano. You know, some of us will do this, you know, but his hands never left, you know.
Yeah.
And I was watching his hands, but what his hands were doing is not what I was hearing. So when Fats Waller said God is in the house, talking about Art Tatum,
Right.
I have no doubt about that.
Right.
Because I've never heard anybody play a piano like that.
Yeah.
And I was just talking the other day, last year I think it was, when they had 3 days of Art Tatum at the Apollo Theater, you know?
Yeah.
And I went there to see that and experience that. But what knocked me out, the theater was full of young people.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So for me, Tatum is
Genesis. Right?
he is Mr. Modern Jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next question. Don't get shy on us now. Yes, right there.
Yes, why are there not more female artists, jazz artists, spoken about, displayed, active? Doesn't seem to here or there.
The lack of recognition for female artists. You know, why are there not more female artists mentioned or celebrated in the music? Do you feel that that's the case?
Of course.
Yeah.
The woman has always been put in the background.
Right.
Nothing new. You know.
Right.
But I'm sure that the original pianists coming out of the black church were women.
Yeah.
You know. And I heard some incredible pianists were women. But I think just the way the structure is, somehow we got away from, because traditional Africa was the woman.
It's all about the mother. Yeah.
Mama. And you have more queens of Africa than any other civilization. They had many great queens. And they did everything. You know, everything you could think of. Respected by the man, loved by the man. But I think when Africa was invaded from the north, then everything changed around and it became the patriarch, the male took over. You see. But for women, she's always been our foundation. She's always been there. And we had a pianist in Brooklyn named Tex. Oh, this woman could play. I don't think she ever made a record, but she was incredible. You know? So the status of woman is a long struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, she was the queen, you know. Yeah. And it got turned around.
Yeah. Well, just to reiterate, you know, we mentioned earlier that one of your closest foils was Melba Liston. And of course you mentioned Marion Williams. And what about in the current scene, like on the modern scene, who are some of your favorite female musicians?
Well, you know, I unfortunately or fortunately, I'm involved with the past. I don't get to hear. I like Jerry Allen.
Yeah.
We just played opposite each other for Mary McPartland,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So I don't get around like I used to because I'm still trying to understand this tradition of music, not only of Africa.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
And why do I say that? Because this music was our traditional way of life. It wasn't just music. It's how we survived oppression, slavery, told her we had the wrong color, told her we're inferior people, and whatnot. So like in African society, there's music for a child being born, there's music for a funeral. Some societies in Africa, if you're 5, you can't become 6 until you learn the songs of a 6-year-old. If you don't learn those songs, you never be 6. Some societies in Africa, there's no such word as music. Why? Because everybody does it. Why bother to give it a name?
Right.
You see? So when you look at the traditional music, polyrhythm, spontaneous creativity, totally. So we're doing the same thing, the same thing, but it's been cut in different ways. The advantage that we had, that all the music was ours. There was no separation. There was no generation gap at all. Because our parents, they were the hit ones, not us. You see? So they exposed us to the best music, whether it was opera, whether it was jazz or blues, all these titles. They let us know this is all ours. It's all our creation.
Next question.
Mr. Weston, I did see you. I'm over here. I did see you at Alice Tully Hall, and Regina Carter was playing with you, and she's fantastic. But I have a couple of questions. Number one, I saw you at Jazzmobile some years ago, and you had I know Melba Liston was in the band, and Hal Vick, and Leon Thomas was on the scene. I don't know if did he ever work with you, and could you speak a little bit about him?
About Leon?
Yes.
Well, you see, Melba Liston, she was the key. And there were certain people around Melba. Bud Johnson, for example. Quentin Jackson, the trombonist. Leon Thomas. There were certain ones that would be around Melba all the time. And that's how I got to really know Leon. Only time we really performed together is when we did Uhuru Africa at 651 in Brooklyn. And he sang the male part of African Lady, which Langston Hughes did the text, But we loved each other. We'd see each other often because, like I said, we all loved Melba Liston, and she had this group of people around her that loved her and respected her. So I got to know Leon very well, but that was the only time we actually performed together.
The other question I had, they had the clubs in Brooklyn. I wasn't old enough to go there, but used to hear them advertised. Did you ever play at those clubs in downtown Brooklyn, like the Baronet, I think it was called, or the Coronet?
The Blue Cornet?
Say it again.
The club in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Did you ever play there?
All those clubs in Brooklyn?
Those clubs in
yeah,
downtown?
we grew up in Brooklyn. We had more clubs in Brooklyn than they had in Harlem.
Wow.
Yeah, we had clubs all over Brooklyn. Yeah, the Blue Coronet was one of the last.
Wow.
Yeah, but we had many, many clubs in Brooklyn.
Like even long before the Blue Cornet.
Because a lot of people don't realize Brooklyn is one of the biggest cities in America. Just Brooklyn by itself. Yeah. So we had different areas of Brooklyn where you have clubs, and we just go from club to club and hang out,
Wow.
So sometimes we never have to leave Brooklyn to hear the music. And we had so many giants in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Next question.
I'm saying, Mr. An interview of Count Basie, and the interviewer asked him, what would he like to leave on his tombstone? And he said 2 words, nice guy. What would you like to see left on your tombstone?
What would you like to see left on your tombstone?
I think I'd like to be in a time capsule.
There you go.
And go back and watch the first African who touched a piano and what he did with it.
I knew I did an interesting answer.
Actually, we had a question over here.
Lady right here.
Right there.
I'd like you to talk about practicing.
Every day, 4 hours.
He said he wants you to talk about practicing.
What about practice?
A little more
How often do you practice?
When I feel it.
There it is. Let's see, let's go back over here section for a second, then we'll come back.
This lady.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wondered if you ever played at the Mechanics Temple on Putnam Avenue
Of
in
course.
Brooklyn? And who did you play with there? Do you remember?
Well, Willie Jones, the drummer. Ahmad Abdul Malik is Brooklyn. Sam Gill is Brooklyn. Franklin Skeets of Brooklyn. And we organized a concert with Monk.
There?
Yeah. At that place. Yeah, right on
It's still
Putnam
there,
Avenue.
you know?
It's still there. And the guy who ran it, his name was Johnny Parrish. And we convinced him, and Max Roach had a studio there. Yeah. So in that building, Max had a studio and he was teaching the young drummers. I'm talking about the 40s now and the early 50s.
And what place was that?
Called Putnam Central Club.
Putnam Central.
It's the Mechanics Temple.
Yeah, Mechanics.
Temple. Okay.
It's between Downing Street and,
So you're really Brooklyn, huh?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But
Yeah.
could I follow that up? You worked with Langston Hughes,
Yes.
and in 1949 he wrote the book for William Grant Still's Troubled Island about Haiti. Did you work with William Grant Still at all when you were working with Langston Hughes, or?
I didn't get the question, sorry.
Did you ever work with William Grant Still?
No, never did. No, that's giant. No, I never had the opportunity. No.
Okay, we're gonna go right here.
I want to segue on Mr. Powell's question.
Speak up, please.
Can you tell us about the book that you're working on?
Can you tell us about the book that you're working on?
Oh, it's my autobiography, and it'll be out in the spring of 2010. And Willa Jenkins is the writer, and the book was entitled African Rhythms.
Uh-huh.
And the book starts off with, and how we were brought up, how money didn't mean anything to us. Nobody had money. But how we had so much love. So I wrote a song called African Village Bed-Stuyvesant. Okay. That meant for me, we grew up in Brooklyn in an African village because we couldn't go out, Maybe on weekends my dad would take me to a Chinese restaurant, but that was about it. Because we weren't welcome because of that pretty color that we have. We weren't welcome. So therefore, everything happened in the community. So I go to Huey Blake's house, and Huey is close to 100 years old. I sit in the corner, and Huey tell me all the stories about what happened at 18, so and so and so and so. I go to Max Roach, and that's where he made me play for Charlie Parker, and I was like this. I was so scared, and Max made me play with Charlie Parker. I was in Max's house when they were doing Cubana B, Cubana Bop, when he brought the great Channel Poser from Cuba with that African-Cuban drum to the orchestra. So we had everything in Brooklyn. The big band rehearsals, 11 o'clock in the morning. So for me, it was an African village, you see. And the music is how we survived, because it was very difficult for African-American people to get jobs. You couldn't drive a truck at that time. It was doing also around the Depression, because I was born in 26. And Mom and Dad in that generation, they had to really scuffle, but they kept us spiritual, they kept us strong, they kept us with a sense of vision, they gave us pride to say who we are and how we are, when the rest of the world said, no, that chocolate is no good, But they gave us the other things. So it was so important because everybody loved the music, and we mostly played for dancers. Because at that time, there was no separation between the music and the dance. So for example, if Duke Ellington came to the Savoy Ballroom and Duke had written some new music, they would have the best dancers at the Savoy Ballroom to create a dance for the new music.
Yeah.
But the Second World War they put a 20% tax on places of dance. And all the ballrooms shut down. And that's when jazz music and dance separated.
Yeah.
But they were always together. All we used to play was dances.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Now I'm going to come back to you. I know you had your hand up. I'm going to go over here real quick. Yes, in the doorway.
Please tell everybody who Clarence Scobie Stroman is and what is his importance to jazz, period.
Well, Clarence Scobie Stroman. Okay. I was talking about how our parents, they knew that we have to study the arts, you know. So I went to this dancing school, right? And I was 12, and Clarence Stroman was 8, right? And he was dancing, but I could never dance, you know. So that's how long we knew each other. Wow. We go back and we were children. That's how far back we go with Scobie. And we were so close. He was a drummer and a dancer that when I had an opportunity to go to Nigeria in 1961, I took Scobie and Booker Irvin. Wow. Those are the 2 people I took with me to Nigeria. So that's how important he was. He was family, Clarence Scobie. This gentleman's from Brooklyn, and how we all grew up together. He was a great dancer. We went to dancing school together, but I didn't make it. My feet were too big, man.
I love you, baby, but your feet's too big. Yes, right
Fast
here.
new.
Yes. First, I want to say what an honor it is and a blessing to be in your presence.
Yes.
There'll never be another moment like this moment. Now, my question is, you mentioned Duke Ellington's Black, Brown, and Beige. And that's one of my favorite compositions of his. And I only get a chance to listen to it on the album. What was it like to partake of him in person, the master?
I missed it.
What was it like to be around Duke Ellington in person?
Reverend Gensel, John Gensel, he was the one that started the whole concept of jazz vespers. And the church at that time was not 54th Street, it was on Broadway. And that was during the time when we couldn't get gigs. It was hard to get gigs. So we used to have loft parties, we had rent parties. And so I had an apartment on 13th Street, on 3rd Avenue. And I think we paid something like $76 a month.
Wow.
6 rooms.
Wow.
And we'd have to have rent parties to pay the rent. So sometime on weekends we'd have Ray Bryant come and play with a group. Right in the apartment, right on 13th Street, 3rd Avenue. Somehow the police never stopped us. I don't know. 3, 4 o'clock in the morning we're playing. So John Gensel, he brought Duke's sister to one of these sessions, you know. And she heard me play. And she said to me, "You have to meet my brother." We got to be very good friends. And Duke did a concert at Lincoln Center of Night Creature with a trio and New York Philharmonic Orchestra. So Ruth Ellington, by this time I met John Gensel through her. We started Jazz Vespers and whatnot. I started to look at the Ellington family. So she arranged for myself and Peg Morrison to play a reception for Duke. So after the concert, Duke was walking down like this, and me and Peg Morrison were playing, you know. So here comes the king, you know. And he gave me a look, like everything was okay. Somehow, some kind of spiritual contact. Then finally, one time at her apartment, by this time, all my children, my father, we all go to Ruth's house, you know. She was so wonderful. So one time when I did Blue Moses, which was my only hit record, I did in 1972, which ironically I'm playing electric piano, which I don't like, but that was my only hit record. It was all about Morocco. So she had Duke on the telephone.
CTI.
Mhm.
CTI, thank you.
Yeah. She had Duke on the telephone and asked Duke to listen to the music, and he heard it. So to make a long story short, I sat in front of Mr. Ellington with awe. And I ended up doing a recording for him. He started a company called Piano Records. And he had Bobby Short, Abdullah Ibrahim, and myself. But it never happened as a company. And in his publishing company, I have 20 of my compositions. And somehow, Mr. Ellington and myself, it was quite a spiritual experience to know this man and have this kind of contact with him. It's very, very important in my life, because for me, he's the essence of everything we do. Duke Ellington.
We have a question right there.
Mr. Weston, I've done a lot of work in Brazil, and a lot of the Africans taken to Brazil came from Angola. I'm just wondering, did you ever make it to Angola?
Did you ever make it to Angola?
No, never got to Angola. I've been to Rwanda. I was in Rwanda in 2006. The same quintet. We spent about 10 days in Rwanda playing for the people. I've been to South Africa finally in 2006, although my music had been banned in South Africa since 1964. And so that's as further south as I've been. Never had an opportunity to go to Angola.
Question right there.
Is African ownership of this music diminishing? And if so, why? Is African ownership of this music we call jazz diminishing? And if so, why?
Is African ownership of this music diminishing? And if so, why?
I love that question.
Because it appears that African people, we give everything away. We've been feeding this planet for many thousands of years.
Since the beginning.
That seems to be our job. But it's sad in a way because we've gotten away from our ancestors to create this music. And so everything's being commercialized now. I hear television, I hear a little bit of Ganawa here, a little bit of here, and the music is losing its spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Parker plays spiritual music. Dizzy Gillespie plays spiritual music. Gladys plays spiritual music. Because without this music, we would never survive in this country. You see, going back to the black church, my mother and those sisters would go in that church on Sunday, and they would get their batteries charged through that music, so they can go out and deal with that racism the rest of the week. You see, the so-called jazz music made all of us think higher. When you hear Gillespie, and you hear Ellington, you hear these people, whatever you do, if you're a photographer, if you're an athlete, whatever you do, when you hear this music, it inspires you to do more. Because the music of Africa has always been that. Now it's thinned out all over. But at the same time, Roy, it's coming back, man. It's coming back. As I said earlier, we just left Paris less than 2 weeks ago. And we saw this incredible exhibition of Africa jazz. Huge like this. You could walk a good 2 hours and you see everybody from Louis Jordan to Count Basie to Mahalia Jackson, you name it, all the performers, old sheet music, going back to the early 19th century, And when you look at this exhibition, you realize the impact of Africa on the world. But somehow, that seems to be our job, feeding the world. We've been doing it a long time. But I think It's our leadership is not like it was before. We had people like Jackie Robinson, people like Muhammad Ali, people like Sugar Ray Robinson, people like Adam Clayton Powell. All of our leaders were into the culture.
Mm-hmm.
They were into the culture. You would see them to come and hear the music, you see. So we've lost that. We've lost that greatness, you know, the great music, but also leaders were into the culture, you know. So it's been, you know, it's been sterilized and what you name it. But at the same time, those rhythms, those sounds, those colors are spiritual. And we've given a lot of happiness to this planet through this music.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, we've heard you talk about Duke Ellington. I would like to know if you can give me an idea on how you felt about Billy Strayhorn's music.
What did you feel about Billy Strayhorn's music?
Wow.
Yeah. Flower is a love something.
We just played for Billy a few weeks ago at the Jazz Vespers at church on 54th Street. And Billy was incredible. You know, him and Duke, wow, it's hard to separate them two. But Billy's music is all that beautiful stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I played Star-Crossed Lovers, which is one of the pieces I love by Strayhorn. No, he was a master composer, just a great, 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 great musician.
We had a question right there.
Hi, Randy. When I first met you back in '83, you and the group of musicians around you made me aware of the lack of the music being really in the community. And there seemed to be a desire on the musicians' part for the church to take a better, you know, more active role in bringing the music to the people, so that it wasn't just in the clubs where there were liquor and, you know, all of that going on. How would you rate that today? Do you feel that the music is more in the community, is getting, you know, more for the people, the masses, to see it as opposed to be a part of it, as opposed to, say, being downtown and, you know, high price and stuff where people can't get to it?
Do you mind if I edit that question? I kind of know where you're going with that question. Do you feel that the music is still very much a part of the community? Is it still in the community as opposed to, like, you know, going downtown to Times Square to pay $50, $60 to hear it? You know, is it still kind of right here in the community?
No, it's not in the community. I mean, there are a few struggling to keep it in the community, like Brother Billy Saxon, who's here.
Yeah.
He has his wonderful club to keep the music going in Harlem. No, it's not, because again, somehow we got away from the importance of music. Because music is our spiritual language. You can't touch music, you can't see music, but music touches you. And we survive all these conditions I mentioned earlier because of the music. We knew how to create music. You know, in African traditional music, a very important element of African traditional music, you have to make people laugh. It's very important.
Yes.
You do all the other stuff, you know. And to be a master, like we were talking to Ganawa, to be a master, a Ganawa musician, not like here. In the West, if you play great, that's it. Not traditional people, no. You not only have to master your instrument, but you have to be a historian. You got to tell the story of your people and pass it down to the young. Every young child should know Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington in this country. It should be in all the schools, the history of this music. This music is what kept this country together. Before Louis and all those people before us, white people and black people could not be together. We were completely separated from each other. But the spirituality of this music brought us together. So we African people, all of us, we made a major contribution to this planet through our music, because music is our universal language. I go to Japan, I go to Argentina, I go to France, I go all over the world. And where do I go? We speak the same language. Not French, not Arabic, not Spanish.
Right.
We speak music.
Music.
The same with Christian, wherever we go. So we are the messengers of God. This is a gift that we have.
That's so lovely.
See? This is a gift. And this gift is passed down to my ancestors that had to pick cotton. Or my ancestors that couldn't go to the movies. Or they couldn't go to a restaurant because of the color of their skin. Or they told that their hair was inferior. Or told their skin is inferior. But how do we survive? Louis Jordan, Mahalia Jackson, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, because African music is a healing spiritual force. And we come out of the tradition of Mother Africa, but we got all mixed up because of the slave trade and whatnot, but we still maintain that foundation, you see. So music is so important. And that's why I say, as far as the community is concerned, when we get our leadership, our political leadership, our people in economic power to realize the importance of music. For example, we just did a tribute to Max Roach last year. We had 3 days of Max Roach. People don't realize the genius of Max Roach. He was not only just a drummer. He was a composer. He was a visionary. He fought for African civilization. So we said, okay, we want a street named after Max Roach in Brooklyn. You see? So we need to have images for our young people who know who Marcus Garvey was. Not just have the name up there. Who was Mary Lou Williams? Who are these people? These are spiritual people sent by the Creator to give us beauty. All of a sudden, here's Louis, then there's Roy Eldridge, and then there's Dizzy. And you see, every now and then, Charlie Parker arrives, say, you can do music by doing it this way. Bud Powell said, you can do it this way. It's beyond what we call jazz. It's really African culture. And I think it's important once we realize that, to respect that. We realize how our ancestors were able, despite this incredible, I still don't understand it, how they got off that boat with nothing. Every day, every single day of my life, I think about my ancestors, every single day. And when I touch a note, I'm expressing them. Because they had to sacrifice for Randy Weston and Christian McBride to be sitting here talking to you. But the tendency today is to forget about the ancestors. But traditional Africa, which I mentioned before, to be a master, you have to be respected by the community. You have to be a historian. You got to play your instrument well. You have to be able to play ceremonies and rituals. If a child is born, you got to play music for that. There's a funeral, you got to play certain songs for that funeral. If you don't play the right songs, that person cannot die. See? So when you see where this music comes from, and you study traditional Mother Africa, the same people who built the pyramids are the same people that created music. And it's still a mystery. It's a complete mystery how this was done. But the whole human race began in Africa. All of us have African blood, every one of us on this planet. So when we come to recognize that, then we realize, man, Africa has given so much to this world, you know. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
May I?
Please.
I was in Mali about 2 years ago, and I have never seen anything like the music there. In Mali, in every small village, the musicians make their own instruments. You know, they don't have Steinway. You know, then they make these balafons, and they're, I mean, it's just the most amazing music. They play all the time. Children from 4 can dance. I mean, it's just the music is an integral part of the life of the community. And these are small villages that you get to by going 4-wheel drive on dirt roads. I mean, it's not an urban phenomenon.
Well, you see, you ever watch musicians? When we see each other, we hug each other. Now, there's a reason for that. Even if we don't recognize it. You see, hey, baby. Because the music is love. Capital L-O-V-E. You know. And for me, it's time to recognize those that happen. We've got to get into the educational system. We've got to get, who is Louis? Who are these people? Because, man, I don't know how Louis Armstrong did what he did. I'm still amazed. I met Louis Armstrong in Oklahoma City on that tour.
Wow.
And I just shook his hand. I met Dizzy Gillespie at Max Roach's house. I shook his hand because this is our royalty. That they came to uplift our spirits and have us thinking, we are somebody. We have something to say, you know. We are proud people, and we come from greatness. And the music does that because the music brings us all together. That's why we do Europe, we do Asia.
That's right.
We communicate with everybody on the planet.
Messengers.
Because of music.
Have you been to Loren?
Yeah, thank you.
The blues and
He knows.
Unfortunately, as is usually the case every week, when we have to close the show, there's lots of disappointment. Because with a gentleman like Mr. Randy Weston, we could easily be here for the next 2 hours picking this man's brain. But unfortunately, we must be out of this building by 9 o'clock, or the law will be here. So, sadly, we must say goodbye to Mr. Randy Weston, but let's please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. See what I mean by that hug?
You know what I'm saying? That's very real.
Yeah, man, thank you so much.
Christian, we gotta take. We gotta take that.
Careful, you cool? You cool?
We have to present you with your award.
I was on Christian phone, but he got
it.
I'm sorry. We're gonna have to try to get him on that side.
Now, how insulting is it to give him a picture with me on?
Turquoise.
Oh, right. Okay. Got it.
We're gonna get him on this side. We got this thing away here.
Let's get him outside, Randy.
You want the light? Back?
Yeah, because I'm not sure if I have enough room here.
Part of that, send me all that stuff.
How insulting. Give him this.
Make sure that's
Not at all. Here, why don't you hold that, Randy?
Hi, guys.
It was not my choice to have my picture.
Randy, right at the panel, please.
Great, got it. Thank you.
Feel free to use that for, whatever you want.